without further ado, we're 1 minute in. I'm just going to start sliding into a bit of the presentation and go through one slide, and then we will talk about resources, my newsletter quick, and then we're going to get right into how do we start breaking this down, because I have a little acronym for you. So I'm over in my presentation for you. So we're going to refer to these slides as we go through. As you do go into that Bublup folder, you will have access to these slides. And as well, if you are watching this recording, welcome and thank you. And this recording will be in the folder indefinitely as well. Just a quick say, now that we do have people in here, if you aren't in this folder yet, I do invite you to show up, because I'm going to break down the folders and what resources I put in for you. And this will be the place where you'll be able to engage later and submit your newsletters if you create some, or if you already do create some. And I promise to do a little personal critique. I'll look at everything that you submit, and we'll have a little conversation about it. If you go to your email where you had the webinar invite, you will see a folder invite in there for a Bublup folder. And if you follow through with the prompt, then you will end up right in this folder. I put this folder together just for you, just for this webinar. I'm going to be active in it. I will respond to every comment that comes in, every submission that comes in, any question. Okay, this is our little place to literally geek out about newsletters. If you know someone that would find value in it as well, you're more than welcome to invite them in it too. This is an open atmosphere. This was made for you and so that you have a takeaway from this webinar. So just to break this down real quick about who I am, who is this person talking to you? My name is Wade Sellers. I am in Istanbul. I guess you call me a digital nomad. I've been traveling. I left the United States just over a year ago, or I guess a year and 4 months ago now. It's already May. This is crazy, this quarantine thing. And before that, I had a life going with mobile app development, which was what I was in. So my current life, I call them kind of like the app guy. I fell in love with mobile apps, building them, using them, understanding them, looking at the user interfaces and user experiences, and really thinking about them from all scopes, from use to creation. And I've been a professional mobile app developer for 6 years now. With that, I also run a program called Mobile Makers Edu. We help bring iPhone app development into high school classrooms. So basically, I'm a part of a team. We teach the high schoolers, teachers, how to code. We bring them in, we teach them how to code iPhone apps, give them a whole bunch of curriculum that we created, modules, projects, and then they go to the classroom and they teach their high school students to code. So we've been doing that for 5 years now. We're in over 100 schools, and it's a wonderful experience. It really feels like I'm giving back, and we see the impact. The other thing that I do is I work as a community manager with a app development platform called DropSource. This is a platform that allows you to build apps without any code whatsoever. It's a little very drag and droppy, WYSIWYG is what they call it. What you see is what you get. Coding platform where we do the code, you just drop it in and you connect things like puzzle piece style. So very cool. I've had a couple accolades in my career with this. When I first started, I got into a startup in Denver, Colorado. Anyone from Denver here, please let me know. I've been there for 4 years and loved it. I built the world's first iPhone app to ever scan a cannabis plant. So we found an opening, an opportunity in grow houses, because they were starting to legalize the cannabis effort. And they were writing all their inventory down on pen and paper. And I saw that and said, well, there's got to be a way to innovate on this. So I created this little scanner with an app, and you would scan it and they would do it for inventory tracking. That's been a company now for 5 years, and it's still quite successful. The other thing that I did was I was with, the camera company GoPro. I was with GoPro for about a year. I worked on a video editing app called Splice. If you've ever used that, very cool. You used some of the code that I wrote. I'm very proud of that accolade. That was when I went from startup world to billion-dollar corporation world, and that was a very cool experience. Unfortunately, I was laid off because GoPro put a drone in the sky, if you recall that, and it fell out of the sky, and another drone company had better product for cheaper, and so GoPro had to do some layoffs. And during that time, I was talking to a company that looked at my old background, which I'll get to here briefly, and they said, do you want to take your old life and mix it with your new life? Do you want to make apps that help stop human trafficking, crimes against children? We create apps that cops and law enforcement use to help track down the bad guys, right? And I thought that was super cool. I've always had an interest in helping and really trying to create software that makes a difference. and I thought that this was a cool niche, so I got into that and started making apps, spy apps for cops, basically. And that leads me right into just a previous life thing. I was in the military for 6 years. I was in the Coast Guard. I deployed to Kuwait and Guantanamo Bay. I spent time there. And during that time, I applied for an internship with the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and I was there was 4 out of 1,000 that got chosen. I was one of the 4, and so I did that for a while, and that turned into an analyst job. I was investigating cyber criminals and people that were breaking into companies' networks and stuff like that. Honestly, it sounds a whole lot cooler than it was, but it was a great experience nonetheless, and it usually stops people when they look at my resume. What? FBI? That led me into getting kind of a special clearance just because of the building I was in. And with that, I was able to leverage that, and I got into military contracting. I went to Afghanistan for a while. I had quite an experience over there. It was like one of those near-death experiences we don't like to reminisce about. And that changed my life, and that's when I decided I want to do something else. Coding was a hobby, and I dove into it. So this leads me to where we're starting to get into with the newsletter. Basically, what has happened in the last 5 years is I have fallen in love with apps, making them, enjoying them, critiquing them, working with other app companies, talking about their user experience. It's how I came to learn about Bublup through meeting someone on the team, and then she says, well, I work for this app company, we have a really cool product. And then I started looking at it, and I love it. And so not only am I going to show you some features that I use in my workflow with Bublup, but honestly, it's a really cool product. I feel like I have some say in the world of apps just because of my time and attention that I put into it. And while I've been doing this, I'm always geeking out about apps. I look at them, I research them, I play with them. I'm like, I shop for apps like people shop for clothes. It's crazy. I just love it. And with that, I would just tell people in conversation what I was doing. And it got to the point where I started to feel like I could do something with this random information that always seems to be helpful. And people over time would notice that I'm the app guy, and they'd ask me things. Hey, do you know what app would do this? Or I got a really cool app idea for you. And they'd tell me an app idea, and then I say, I love it. It's called da 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 da, and you actually can get it right now, And so I started having these exchanges, and I realized I want to share this out better. I have a lot of projects that I'm always working on, and I'm quite busy. And I thought about a newsletter, and I said, that might be enough. That might be enough for me to be able to put my thoughts as they come into something and stick it out there in the world and start with people that I know. And then if people are interested, maybe I'm the app newsletter that you passively read and find 1 or 2 links that are cool and you want to check out. And that is exactly what I found it to happen. So I created this newsletter. We are going to build issue 12 today, which is very, very cool. I've been doing it for weekly for about 4 months, and you'll notice that doesn't quite add up. That's because there was a couple weeks there where I fell off the train because I was quite frustrated with the way that I was making my newsletter. It was too time intensive. I was I felt like it was becoming less fun and more work than I was prepared for. And that's when I realized I like doing this, but I'm doing it wrong. So there has to be a better way. I want to do it. I just don't want to spend 2.5 days on this thing, right? I don't have that type of time. So I started messing around with like, how do I make this thing better? How do I make my process faster? And I feel like I got to it. I've got to it to the point where now it's a breeze. It's an enjoyable experience to make a newsletter. The replies and the value clearly are evident that they're enjoying the read as well, and they're finding the resources I'm putting in there helpful at times. And it's making me feel good because it's not taking up my day, and I still have this outlet that I can share my interest and love of apps with. I've created an acronym for this called CREATE. So this is kind of where we're going to start sliding into the actual presentation of making this newsletter. The question that we're going to answer is something that I hear a lot, and it's more of a statement. It says, I want to make a newsletter, but it takes too much of my time. I completely understand, because I felt it took too much of my time once I got to issue 3. I was like, oh, I don't know, this is too much for me. But I knew that there must be a better way. I have to be able to simplify it, and I did. So with this, and for this webinar presentation, I kind of took my process, which I didn't really have broken down to this CREATE process, but I was like, let's talk about it. And my military style and the way I am, we love acronyms, and I wanted to figure out, well, let me break it down to a memorable acronym that you can at least take with you. And if you want to, this slide and the slide presentation is in that Bublup folder. which if you are just popping in since I talked about it, if you go back to your invite email in the webinar invite email, you'll see a link to a Bublup invite folder. And if you click that and go through the prompt, you will end up in the Bublup folder where you'll see the webinar presentation, and I will break down what's in these folders I built out for you. But what I've done here is I've created the create process. That just seemed appropriate. The create process has 5 steps, really 4 big ones, and then 5 is the one that's usually overlooked, but I honestly spend more time on that than the rest of it through the week. But it's an enjoyable part of building community. So we have construct, research, elect, assemble, transmit, and then last but not least, we must remember to enjoy and celebrate our creation. I'm gonna start breaking this down for you, and we're gonna go right into the construct phase, which is where I'm gonna explain the tools, right? So construct, before we can start gathering information and putting a newsletter together, we need tools. This is a part that I struggled with before. This is where things like 2 tools that I mainly use, Bublup and Curated, come into play. I'm gonna break this down, but really in the construct phase here, what we need is to answer 3 things. We need a place to put stuff, we need a place to post a newsletter, and we need ways to move things from the place we put it to the place we moved it. If we can get those 3 things down and we can find really, really nice quick systems to put stuff in, to post it, and to get those things from one to the other, it makes the situation quite smooth in my opinion. I think this is a pretty handy step. It's an important part of it. I say this because when I talk about Bublup and the construct step, I knew that there was a way to use this, and I was using it, but I wasn't using it to its potential. I didn't put enough thought into it. What's the situation that started to happen was I'd be on my computer, I would see a cool article, you know, I'd go into Google search here, I'd go to apps, I'd find a cool article, I'd use Bublup's nano bar, which is like honestly one of the coolest features of this thing. You go into an article like this, for instance, and it'll pop up. The little webinar pops right back up, the nano bar. My computer is screaming at me because we're going live, but it will pop up. Where am I at? Oh, you know what? It's because it's already in my folder. That's what's going on. I'm gonna back up. If you hit the plus button when you're at a website, you get this sweet little prompt. This is a handy little prompt. Basically, when you're in the website, it'll show you some screenshots, some images that are in it. You can pick one that you might want to use for your newsletter, and then you get a title and a description. Now, this is to organize the things in your Bublup folder, which is cool, but I started to say, well, I'm in the moment, I read the article, I know the value, I know the thing that interests me about it. So I start thinking about how will I title my newsletter, which I'll show you the structure in just a moment. My email has curated links with personal stories attached to them or personal reasons why you want to follow along. Basically, I'm giving you value and attention, value and my story, value and a reason to stick around. Maybe the link's not for you, but my story's for you. Maybe the link is for you, my story's not for you on that one, things like that. So right here, like with this Slack redesigned Android Studio, I actually already had this one in the, Bublup folder as an example, but I would create this and I'd say, Slack got a facelift. That would be my title for that one in the newsletter. And then while I'm in the spot here, while I just read this article, I might throw a little description in. I use Slack every day for work, which is totally true. The new organization and functionality features on their desktop app are making it to mobile. If you use Slack, you've probably noticed that Slack has changed in desktop 2 weeks ago or maybe 3 weeks ago. And it's pretty powerful now. Your searchability and the way that you can actually curate and create threads is much smarter now. And apparently that's coming to iOS and Android. So I think that this is handy right now, especially as people are working remotely. A lot of people are just getting into remote work because of this whole COVID-19 thing. And Slack has welcomed a ton of new members to their platform. And so this might be something helpful for people that are reading, right? Now I do this, and then where do I stick it at, right? How do I get it into Bublup? Where do I post? Well, I've created a folder for it, and every time in my Apps Weekly folder, I have my research, and every week I create a new folder. This one's called Issue 12 Apps Weekly, and you'll see the Slack logos right there. That's because I already stuck this one in, and it gave me that screenshot for the folder, right? So this is how I stick it in from the computer. I'm going to talk about other ways that you can do this as well, but I feel like I am jumping around just a bit. I want to show you real quick so you understand what we're doing here, my newsletter. So this is Apps Weekly. I'm not asking for your subscription. If you are interested in apps and want to hear about it, feel free to go to appsweekly.com and you can put it in, but that's not the reason for this. There's no pitch here, okay? This is my newsletter, and this is essentially what we create. It starts out, so this tool that I use, Curated, which I'll show you, they give you a free little one-pager, and it always shows your most recent newsletter in it, but you also get this in email form the same exact way I'm showing it to you. So basically, my style is a curated newsletter. I start out with a blurb. This one had the newsletter make this, so I talked up the live event that we're doing now in it, right? And I do a little blurb, and then I say, okay, on with the show. And a friend came up with a term. He said, we're your Wade watchers. So kind of like Weight Watchers, but we're your Wade watchers. So I'm now going to refer to all of my audience, my community, as Wade watchers, and we'll just see how fun that becomes. But essentially what you do is I've got some broken up sections. I've got news, I've got Skillshare, current events, things like that. And I go around, and this is what happens to me. I don't sit down and say, time to build a newsletter. That's not how this works. I find that I passively geek out looking at stuff in my field, my niche. Now, this might not be apps for you, this might be something else for you, but whatever your niche is, whatever your interest is, this is what I invite you to potentially think about making a newsletter for. Or if you're in a company, right? Uh-oh, I was just told you can't hear me. Is that true? Amy, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, cool. He just came back and said now we can. Okay, cool.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you can hear me there. Good deal. Thank you. So what I do is, and this is a part of my speediness and why this works, is through the week I'm researching. I'm just geeking out. I wake up, I go in, I type in apps in Google search. I'm going to show you a couple other ways to research here when we get to the research step. But information just comes to me. And while I read it, I'm enjoying it. And I think about, is this potentially something worth someone else knowing about? Is this newsletter worthy, right? And if it is, it goes into the Bublup folder. The Bublup is my catch-all, right? It is where my research lives. And I don't worry about it through the week. I just get it in there. Because what used to happen before I created this process was I would have screenshots. I'd have photos of screenshots. Maybe those are really cool Instagram ad, right? And I want to remember that game, but I don't want to deal with it right now. I want to deal with it later. I'd screenshot and I'd stick it in my photos. I'd write stuff in my notepad, right? I'd keep Chrome tabs open forever, right? And then accidentally kill my Chrome browser, right? And I'd lose them. And then it would become time to like sit down and, okay, let's write this newsletter. And I'd have to like sift through all these places where I stuck all this crap. That was so frustrating to me. And I needed a better way. This is my better way. I use the Bublup folder to catch everything, right? And it's wonderful for that. And there's a number of reasons why, and when we get to the research phase, I'm going to explain why this is like the tool, okay? So you go through here, and all you see is I have a subject line that's a link, right? This is the title, right? And then the description. So then I break down, in celebration of May the 4th be with you, right? If you're a Star Wars fan, Disney put out a new droid app, which is actually super cool. Not only is it a cool little game app, but if you've ever went to Disney and got the toy, the droid, like the BB bot and stuff, this new app will make that thing function, and you can program it to do cool things. I don't know, that's cool. If you're a Star Wars fan, that's cool. And then I throw in, right, an iOS download, an Android download link, and I move on. This was the most read article last issue. That's what you're seeing. This was Zoom versus Google Meet versus Facebook Messenger Rooms, which is the right video chat app for you. Fantastic article. If you go to appsweekly.com right now and you just click on this, if you use any of these platforms or you do video calls, this will very helpfully educate you on which platform might be best for you. Most people click this link. That's really cool to know, because a lot of times while I'm doing this, I try to figure out what's working. If something's working, then I might stick on that topic. They want to know more maybe, right? Which is why Slack's article was interesting to me for this week, because Slack is another business tool. The business tools article last week was the one. Cool, so we're learning along the way, right? We're learning what the audience wants. This was another fun one, right? So this is Skillshare. I love giving people lessons of how to do something. I love teaching. I love explaining. I mean, here we're doing this webinar right now, right? This is how to add the emoji keyboard to your phone. I use the emoji keyboard like every day. I don't know, 100 times a day probably. I'm always messaging and I use it. And a lot of people didn't know how to do it. I mean, I had we'll check the analytics for it, but this was, I think, the second or third most tapped on article last week, which is awesome. Then there was this really fun one. This is this silly cat game that makes your phone turn into hide and seek. And my girlfriend and I, we put it on Instagram. We made a video testing it out, and I hid my phone. And you have to call out to the cat, and the phone meows until you find it. Absolutely adorable game. Perfect for quarantine. Perfect for quarantine with your kids, but also very much adult friendly. And I imagine if you have a dog in the house, this would be hilarious to have your phone meowing somewhere hidden. That just sounds like fun to me. So this was a no-brainer. And I put this into my app picks section, right? So I like to kind of curate the ones that interest me. Then at the end, I had a closing statement. This one was just very much a thank you. We crossed 163 subscribers, which is, I don't know, I'm blown away. I was like stoked when I had 12 friends, 4 of those being my close family, right? So it's growing. I mean, I'm sharing it. People are sharing it. It's fun. It's growing. And I'm very proud of that. It makes the whole thing fun. And then a lot of people reply back to me, either with comments or criticism, or they add a reply based on an article that was there, or maybe they show me something else, or maybe they call me out if I'm wrong or that article was wrong, which is great. And that just makes the community thing of this whole email newsletter worth it. So just another reason why you might want to consider doing a newsletter, because it's really fun to like talk to people about your interests, right? You get to geek out about your thing. Okay, so that's where we put stuff. Where do we post? Okay, this is curated. So this is curated, and this is the draft. So every week I create a new draft. This is issue 12, and then this is like the screen that we do all the tools. Real quick, what is Curated? Curated is a newsletter app that it allows you to create newsletters, manage users, give you a one-page website to put to collect email addresses, and also has a sponsorship feature. So if someone wants to be a sponsored post in your newsletter, they can do so. They can basically elect to do so through the platform, and then you can figure out your fee and all that if you want to. But it's a really handy tool. There's a lot of tools out there. I'm sure you're familiar with things like MailChimp. Those are great tools as well. You pick your poison. This one just seems to work for me, and I'm quite happy with it. I'm glad I just did this. I wanted to show you one thing, and I wanted to challenge. So I reached out to Curated, and I said, hey, I'm doing a webinar, and I'm going to talk about you, and I don't know what you want to do about it. And I invited them to the webinar. And I said, I'll create a folder for you. I kind of created a challenge for him. I said, I'm going to create a folder for you in the Bublup folder for everybody. And if you want to stick any other newsletters that are good inspiration to people that are in Curated's ecosystem, feel free to, right? Or if you have any any resources that make newsletters work, I mean, they're the newsletter platform. They should have some inside info. So I said, but I'm not gonna send you an invite until it starts, because I want to show you what happens if you work on your newsletter with teams. So in this Bublup folder, the one that I gave to you, if you have a company, right, and you want to create a company newsletter, you have a lot of people working for the company, and maybe they all have value. Maybe your newsletter gives everyone a little section, right? Maybe it's like, this is the IT department's blurb, this is sales, this is marketing. You want to work together? Well, excuse me. Curated, or Bublup is really handy for teams, because you're in this folder as well. I wanted to show you this. I got Calvin from Curated's email, and I said, I'm going to invite you, but I'm not going to invite you until this thing starts. And then you have the hour and anything more to fill up your Curated Editions folder with resources. So we're going to send the invite. Now imagine this was your team, your company team. You would just send the invite. I just realized I sent him an invite, but I forgot to set him to can add. 1 second. I have to change the view to add, which is kind of cool. It gives everyone write permissions. You all have add write permissions, and I'll explain why at the end of our webinar. And I've got, yep, so he can add now. So I think we're all good to go. Okay, Calvin, if you can hear this, you're more than welcome into the folder. Feel free to fill this up, and we'll check it at the end and see if Curated dropped anything in. Think about that as like your team filling the folder with newsletter material, because I think that's pretty cool. Okay, where do we post? We post in Curated. We are going to assemble this, so I'm not going to go too much into detail, but just know that this is the draft screen. You have subscriber screens where you can see everyone's subscriber. I'm not going to go there and blast all their emails. And then you have collected items, sponsorships, and then even statistics. I want to show this, and this is not to brag or boast. I just want to show you real numbers of what's going on here. If you are familiar with newsletters, you know that if you're getting over 20% open rate, 20 to 30%, you're doing good. If you're doing anything If you're doing anything over 5% click rates, things like that, you're doing great. So the open rate of my newsletters started at 73. Now, let's be real, that's 12 people, 4 of them being family. If they're not opening my email, something's wrong, right? But I'm also like, hey, some of my people didn't open it. But anyways, so it's 73. That's the unreal expectation. But now, I mean, we got 163 people. It's been growing just like slowly, and you see 60% open rates, 50%, 50%, 47. Like, this is no joke type open rates, 8%. The last issue, because I wanted to talk about that real quick. The last issue, seven clicks on the Google, 5 on the emoji keyboard. Then we went to the Star Wars issues, and we start going down from there. So it actually works. And I think the reason that it works is because of Curated's format is quite simple. You add links of value, and then I build some strategy around it. And we're going to talk about that as we build. So let's start building. All right, let's get to our next slide. So research, dig in deep, where to look. Okay. So I'm not going to go too much into this because we're all going to have separate ways of doing it. But what I want to show you is what you do with it once you find it. Now, for me, I search in a whole lot of spots. Okay. One of the biggest ones I do is just so obvious. I go to Google, I type in apps, I go to news, and I make sure that it's from new to old, right? And I scroll down and I just look for stuff. This is like the easiest way. I do it on my phone, I do it on my computer. Very, very easy. I see something, meditation apps trending upward. Okay, that's interesting. Now, I don't care to put the meditation apps thing trending forward, but this might turn me on to like, what is one of the apps, right? 10%, I start skimming it, looking for app names. See, this article is just kind of a blurb. They probably stole this news from something else and they moved on. Not for us, right? We start scrolling around, but like that Slack one, this was a handy one. That's why it's in our folder now. Other things I do, and this is why I wanted to show you this. I already showed you how you move something in from Chrome, right? But this is my phone. Now, I'm just like you. We use our phones probably more than our computers, especially when it comes to like passively researching and collecting information. I use my phone more. So the phone really adds some interesting stuff to get things where you want them to the Bublup, right? That's my goal, get it into the catch-all. So I go in here and let's say I pick an article. Doesn't matter which one. Let's say that this article is something that I want to share, right? What I do here in Chrome is I hit the little share button in the top right. Bublup pops right up. Once you, I went to some other folders, but the last ones will appear there. You go, I'm going to go to Apps Weekly, my research, right? And now I'll show you the second one, issue 12, right? And I would just drop it right there, save here, done and done. And then I just move on with, excuse me, I just move on with my life. Let me get a swig of water here. That's it, I move on with my life. Okay, other things, now that I've showed you how to do that, I go to other places. I go to my App Store, right? App Store is wonderful. App Store now is like a newspaper. It's so cool. So one that's in there, and I want to show you this is, this was from today, 5 new games we love. Okay, we're talking games. People are sitting around at home bored. Let's talk about games. Well, there's a SpongeBob SquarePants app. I don't know if you got millennials, I don't know if you watched some SpongeBob SquarePants, but I definitely loved that show as a kid. Well, there's now this new app. I think it's cool. I'm gonna play it. And just for reference here, I want to show you, if this was one that I wanted to show and I wanted the App Store link to actually be in the newsletter, so if you clicked on it, you'd slide right over to the App Store. I hit the share button, I go to Bublup, right? Issue 12, right there, highlight that, write my title and my description, hit save, it's in the Bublup. Now it's already in there, I wanted to make sure this would work. Live presentations, you know, you want to make sure you're good. But that's it. I would do that, and then I move on with my life. Super, super handy. Okay, so that's how you collect. Now, where to ask for information. I don't have a slide for this, but the other thing that I do is you get into your networks, you get into your Google groups, you get into your tweets, you follow the right people, you start asking around. Other things that I do is when there is an app update and the company's like someone that will talk back to you in a tweet, or if I can email them, a lot of times mid-level apps, things that aren't the big ones that everyone uses, they're quite communicative. And I'll ask them for input or a question on the new feature. Why did they do that, or what drove them to it? And I let them know that I'm going to put it in my newsletter. I'm asking for a quote. It's no different than a reporter asking for a quote. It takes 2 seconds. Send a tweet at whatever app, ask a question, they reply back, you got a quote, moving on with your day. You can take that tweet, share it right into your Bublup as well, right? Boom, catch all. It all goes in. Wonderful, wonderful way to get it all in there. Facebook groups. I'm in a bunch of iPhone app developer groups. I'm in a bunch of app groups, indie developer groups, all these places where all these apps are coming out and people are really spreading their passion. I'm just geeking out and I'm looking and I'm scanning through. So that is that's another place where you look for information. And with that, through the week, that's enough. Okay, that's enough for me to do it. Okay, now we have our research. Okay, we've went through the week. We have our compiled resources in there. Now it's time to elect what's going to make it. This is where I spend the most time. This is actually when it's time to like, okay, let's put that newsletter together. This is the biggest phase for me now. So what I do is I go into Bublup. I go into my research. And if you want access to this folder, just let me know. You totally can get in. Hey, look, Calvin Morris just joined the newsletter. So Curated is in the Bublup folder. So hey, Calvin, welcome. And yep, I already let people know that your resources will be in there when we're ready for them. So thanks for joining and thanks for accepting the cool challenge. So okay, issue 11, Apps Weekly, or issue 12, Apps Weekly. This is everything from the week that I compiled that I thought was like decent. Okay, like this was good stuff. For me, when it comes to my newsletter, this is where it's for me, not for you. You choose your own format, but I find that about 4 or maybe 5 links creates a nice size, scrollable, passive look newsletter. It's not too many words, there's not too many things, it's not overbearing. It's not supposed to be overbearing. It's supposed to be fun and informative. We're not serious. We're talking about apps here. It's all good. Some of the topics are serious, right? That like the app helps a serious problem, but that's not what the point is. The point is to passively look and catch some neat stuff along the way that I would have passed to you in conversation. Okay, so I start going in here. My elect phase, I start taking it serious. I go into each resource. Okay, so this was one. New York City forces fee ceiling on food delivery apps. I wrote that title when I put this in here. And then if I do edit, you'll see the full description. I say in the description, I remember when Uber's surge pricing skyrocketed during Houston, Texas flooding. It was absolutely absurd, $100 Uber rides just to go to safety. Is New York City overstepping, or are they the hero their citizens need in these unique times, right? That was what I put. That feels catchy enough. Also, I'm talking about things like Uber Eats, Grubhub, stuff like that. Like this is interesting to people, especially because they're using it a whole lot more right now, especially food delivery, right? So I think this one's interesting. Now, this is when I actually go in and I do a proper scan. This is when I fact check stuff, okay? I try to do my due diligence and don't just throw anything up there. How do I know the BBC got it right, right? Stuff like that, especially if they're talking about New York City and BBC. Like, let's think about that, right? So I'm scrolling through, I'm looking for things, I'm looking for quotes, I'm looking for important facts, I'm looking for an author, I'm looking for a recent date of publish, because sometimes Google or sometimes the news you get is old, and I try to not let the old stuff get in unless it's really, really worth it, right? This article, I think, is actually a pretty legit article. I've read things about this. They are capping the fee at 20% to charge and no more, and Grubhub's basically saying, if you do that, we're going to have to pass the charges on to the restaurants and such. And this is where it's like, is New York City being Big Brother on an app, or are they protecting their citizens from Grubhub taking advantage of them, right? So it's an interesting article, I think. And it's app related, Grubhub app, Uber Eats, things like that. It's in my brand. I think it's cool. So I want to put this one in there, right? It's time to start electing it. I elect that this one goes in. So what I do is, one cool thing that you get with Curated is you get this bookmarklet. I have it stored up here, and basically what you do is, if you're at a page, you click this bookmarklet, okay? And then this comes up. You get this window. Think of this as Bublup's nano bar. This is Curated's bookmarklet, right? What you put in here will go over there. The reason that I take this step is because I like Curated to be easy. I want Bublup to be my catch-all. I can put a lot of stuff in Bublup from a lot of different areas. That makes my life easy while I'm just going about my day and finding articles. Then it's very important that I handle this part step right, because once I do this step right, it makes it so easy and Curated that it's literally a joke almost. I laugh at how easy this is, because you just take these incremental steps and essentially are building the newsletter along the way. This is the secret of this whole thing. If you take nothing more from this, just know that when you pair these two tools up and you get used to them, it makes a newsletter in an hour worth doing. I even see I have 25 minutes left, and we're gonna have time for questions. Okay, so right here, New York City caps fees, delivery apps. Okay, I like to remove the source because when they get to it, they'll see the source. I don't think that it's necessary that I put it in there. Then I have this folder up. I go back over to my Bublup. I usually have less tabs open, so it's easy to find them. I go to Bublup. I take my description, which, hey, works out for my newsletter, drop it into the body. Awesome. And I select my category. This one's news, obviously. And if I wanted to add a screenshot, I would add it here. I'm actually finding that the screenshots sometimes work and sometimes they seem to be a burden on people. So for this one, I'm not going to elect a screenshot. So I have New York City caps fees for food delivery apps, and then I have a personal message. This is the other thing I want to talk about. I'm talking about news, I'm doing skill shares, I'm sharing links. Links are dry. That's okay. We make the newsletter our own by adding our personality. I remember, I reminisce, I tell an old story. I want you to get to know me based on the description of what I share along with the link. The link is the value, the story is the personality. And I really feel that that is why people are scrolling to the end. People are enjoying it enough to reply back. It's working. And I suggest that you think about it when you're doing your newsletters too, because it seems to be I come with the value and I come with the personality. It seems to work. Okay, at this point I hit save. It does its magic, and now it's over in curated land. We don't worry about it for now. Let's keep going. The other one that I thought was a really, really cool article I want to stick in this time around is Retro Pac-Man. So there was a games tab in the App Store, and they revamped the old school Atari Pac-Man. I downloaded it, played it. It's good. It's real good. So it's just really cool. The other one was a well-made hockey game. So this is like a little game that you play with your phone, and it's kind of like old Blades of Steel for Nintendo. If you can see a theme, I'm 34. I'm into these old games, and I thought both of them were really well done. I want to share them. The other one I want to share is that SpongeBob app. I thought that was adorable, and this was the story for the retro gaming. Okay, that's fine. And this Slack got a facelift. So at this point, I am kind of questioning, do I have too many games? Do I want to put news in there? I had one news. I'm not going to have any skill share in this one. So do I keep this one lighthearted and just do, I'm going to talk about your food and let's talk about games? That seems good. That seems worthwhile. And that's where it starts getting into thinking about theme. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if there is a general theme, I think it's helpful. This one I think is going to be, let me drop one news story and then we're going to talk about games, okay? I'm hitting topics, so I'm hitting something you care about, like something you use like Uber Eats. I'm talking about themes, I'm talking about games. You're sitting around in quarantine, games seem like a good thing. The App Store is blowing up. I saw another article that like the amount of in-app purchases and downloads are like skyrocketed right now. It's like just after Christmas when everybody gets their new phones and they're downloading apps. That's what's happening right now in this quarantine. So people are using them, which means people are looking for them. And that's something that I realize is working. So what's worked? I pay attention to my old newsletters. I see what's been clicked on. I pay attention to my replies. I look for trending articles. That's an indicator it might be interesting because lots of people are clicking on them. And I tend to stick to those themes as I'm passively getting information. Okay, so let's stick these ones over in curated as well. So here's Retro Pac-Man. I'm going to pop that open. I'll let the next one load as well. Hockey, and we're going to throw SpongeBob in there too. Okay. Those are all popping up. Here's Pac-Man. Okay, Pac-Man's right here. Save to Apps Weekly. I already wrote my little blurb for it, so I go back to Pac-Man. I hit edit, and I'm basically just passing over what I wrote when I was thinking about the article. I'm just sticking it in now. I wrote my newsletter along the way, right? I don't have to get super creative like when it's time to sit down and do it. Basically, the work's already done. I'm just moving data around when it's time to sit down and do it. I'm making sure that my articles are legit. I'm fact checking. But all I'm actually doing is just organizing. If you have any questions so far, feel free to drop them in. I'm going to scan through and I'm going to hit them all up. And if we have to stay later to answer them, that's fine. But I think I should still be good on time here. So I'm going to hit save on that one, Retro Pac-Man. I call it quarantinings, right? We're getting fun with it. I'm playing a lot of games in these quarantinings, personal story, right? There's my personality in it. And I'll hit save. We'll go over to SpongeBob here. What am I doing? Yep, I'm going to Curated. Go back over to Bublup. SpongeBob game. This one I just had just the title because I wanted to show you. SpongeBob game. Oh my God. How many millennials are reading this? Literally, you're bringing, what was it, Squidward? Is that how you spelled it? Squidward and Patrick right into your pocket screens. And then I'll be honest, I haven't tried it yet, but it's totally happening this week. Reply back with your thoughts if you try it too, right? Cool. So we drop it in there. Oh my God, how many millennials? Da, 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 da. If I made some spelling mistakes, maybe I'll fix it here. If not, no big deal. I have one more chance to check it and curate it before we move forward. I'll drop that in app picks, hit save, and we're moving on. Let's go to the hockey game. Okay, this was such a cool game. If you have an iPhone, you should check this out. It was a fun little time waster. I sat on the couch last night playing this one. Okay, brutal game on the App Store. I believe I wrote a blurb for this. Yep. So I go to edit. Super well-made hockey game, right? Oops. Yeah, super well-made hockey game. Drop it into my title. Said this gives me the classic Nintendo vibes. Look, I even use an emoji, right? Because you can do that in Curated, and you can do that in Bublup. Everything plays ball. I love emojis. So I drop that in. URL looks good. That's another app pick. Perfect. And I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? I think from here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab a screenshot for this one. So I just do a screenshot, save it. Saves into my little screenshots folder. Let's go back to the bookmarklet. Choose screenshots. There it is. Awesome. Wham bam. The aspect ratio, I usually just keep the original aspect ratio. You can go 29 or squares. If I just choose the original, then I get all the photos, so I like that. And save. Also, if you want to make this real cool looking, you can use Markdown. If you know Markdown, you can make it bold and Italian. You can switch all sorts of stuff up. You can insert deep links into it. You can do whatever you want. I'll hit save. Up to Curated World. We're good to go. Okay, so that's all 3 articles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 7 articles. We're choosing 4. I think that's fair. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, that's perfect. Okay. Basically, our bubble up time here is good. We've done what we needed to do. The only thing I would do is after this issue, I'll create issue 13, so it's ready to go. And next week, that's where the new stuff goes, right? Now let's move over to Curated. I'm going to go into my issues. I'm going to go to draft, issue 12. Okay. Look what we got here. Items 4, hockey game, SpongeBob, Pac-Man, New York City. Awesome. I moved it all over, okay? Now, I started this draft, and I always just call them issue 12 because I'm proud to see the number raise, and I want people to see that the number's ongoing, and they should stick around and see issue 13. The other thing you get is when you hit edit here, you write a summary. This is the subject line on the email, right? So I make it short and sweet, but something worthwhile. This issue was made live. That's screaming out at them like, what? So I try to make that like, you know, not clickbait, but you know, you want to be a little different. One time I said, I promise you there's no coronavirus articles in this email. And people laughed about that. So that worked because everything was coming, you know, was coronavirus. Okay, then I'll hit cancel. You set your due date. I'll hit cancel here because I already have it set. And then I start with what I call my blurb. I said, and we're live. I made this newsletter in a live webinar that was sponsored by Bublup. I used Bublup to store my research. Reply if you'd like to see behind the scenes into that Bublup folder as well. If you'd like to see behind the scenes, I'm happy to send the invite to you as well. No problem. Just You can just drop it into, I'll tell you what, in the Bublup folder, I will create a space there to elect to get into the other one, and I'll do it. I don't want to spam your emails, so we'll do it right. So just look in the Bublup folder for it, and I'll do it. Okay, this is the magic. Watch this. I have my articles, I have my draft. You can see that when I chose the categories, it shows them right there. I have 3 app picks and I have 1 news. Import all. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, now rough cut, but my newsletter's done. It's 8:46. I probably could have done that in 20 minutes. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Blurb, and we're live. I made this newsletter in a live thing, right? The link is attached to it. Uh-oh, I made a typo. I go to edit. I fix the typo, right? Blurb, I can drop an image still if I want to, right? Save it, move on. Read it, make sure it looks good. One thing that I noticed here that I don't like is I like to make my titles sometimes. I've been testing this out to figure out if it's making any difference, but I kind of like to capitalize them all. Delivery apps. Cool, BBC, you see the link there. You can test it if you want to. Body, I've got it, we're good. News, no need for a picture in this one. SpongeBob game, cool. Retro, good. Super well made hockey game, great. I've got a picture in that one, right? Okay, we're good. I need to go back to this other slide. We're assembling. So organize it, add personality, bring your reader in. Okay. I just showed you how I organize it. I go by categories. When you're creating your curated, you have the opportunity to add your categories that you want. You can get your look and feel set up. You make this setup. I chose my colors, I chose my background, my little blurb up top. You set it up, and then the newsletters drop in, right? And every time you make a new one, you get a new one. They can go to the previous issue. I love this because it allows people, like emails nowadays, you're not sure if you're gonna actually subscribe to an email anymore. You wanna see the value up front, right there. Look and see what I'm doing. If you're interested, stick around, right? If you're not interested in getting an email, come on back and check it out here. It's solving the same purpose, right? So anyways, I go back here, issue 12, we are in, I've got this, and then the one thing that I like to do is I like to do a new text item. I like to do in closing. You might have found some spelling errors. I just made this newsletter in 48 minutes live while discussing the entire process along the way. It's quick, it's dirty, but it proves the process works. Reply back if this just made you curious to start your own newsletter, and I'll share with you the Bublup folder resources. Cool, right? And now it's like a salutation. It's not just me this time. It's all the viewers watching. Saying hello and have a great day. There you go. Now you got a little love in it as well. If you subscribe to it, you will see it. So here we go. You might have found some spelling errors. Save. In closing, we'll go to the bottom, and there we go. Okay, newsletter is done. Now, could have I added more photos? Sure. Could have I made some GIFs? Yeah, I could have went that far. And if I have the extra time, sure. But this proves that you can make a personality infused, value-filled newsletter with imagery built along the way through the week without actually really sitting down to say, it's time to make a newsletter. Oh, because that's what I used to do, and it was draining, and that's why I started to fail, and I needed a better way. This is that way. Now, before we go sending it out, preview the issue. You can do two things. You can send an email preview. Cool, test email sent to me, and the web preview. They'll literally mock up what the website will look like, right? And then you can scroll through it and see if things work. This is a great time to look at your images. Now it looks huge here, but when it comes in the email, I'll show you as well. It's not so it's not so big, right? You see my links, you can check them out, you can click the links, everything works in here. This totally works, right? It's a short newsletter, but look, like even still without imagery, it still looks good. I color coordinated my areas because some people might be into the news or they just stay for the app picks, right? Stuff like that. So they can scroll real quick to the red side, to the blue side, stuff like that, right? And they get to it. I think that all looks good, okay? Next thing we gotta do is, let's check our email. Email. This is so fun to do this live. I love this. Okay, you'll see it right up top there. Apps Weekly, issue 12. You can see it's a test. Scroll in. That looks good. Look how clean that looks. Come on. Like, this is an email that you scan, get some info, and move on with your day. That's the purpose here. That's why it works. And then right there, see, even the screenshot works great. If I do a phone screenshot, which I've done, it's still it's good sized, right? Even with the original aspect ratio, it's good sized. Curated did a good job at this. In closing, you see my remarks there, and then they can unsubscribe. I didn't have to build any of that. That's all built in for me. They can move on, and then they can reply to the email and move on with their day. I love this issue. You can see the issue was made live, sits at the top there in the branding. That's cool too. They can go right to your website. They have access to your archives, and then you don't do any of that stuff. They just give it to you. It's cool. So that's it. Okay, I'm happy with it. Now it's time to send it out. So assemble, transmit. Okay, title, subject, summary, test, schedule. We did some of that already. I showed you the title and the subject, right? So that's the title and the subject of each article. I showed you the summary. That's in the email top there. You set the summary. This issue was made live, right? So it's the subject line. Make it nice and small. Subject lines will get cut off based on different email clients, and you want your whole message to go through. So find the right size. You got to experiment. We just tested, right? We previewed on the website. We previewed on our phone. We know everything's good. Click the links. Make sure you're good to go. Make sure you set this thing up for success. Good to go. And now schedule. Okay, this is just my step. I don't know if everyone else does this or not, but I schedule 24 hours out. So I send it and I give myself a grace period. So you can schedule or publish immediately is what this says. I'm gonna hit schedule. I got a time, schedule 4. Today is the 15th. This is, so we're gonna set it for the 16th. And let's say, I've been testing out when to send this thing. I've been sending it on different days and different times just to see what works. This one's got lots of games in it, which is kind of fun. I'm thinking people are probably chilling Friday, Saturday. I'm thinking I'm gonna send this Saturday lunchtime US. So let's say noon, so that's 8 p.m. tomorrow for my time. Okay. Schedule, this will be sent to 161 people. Now I could publish issue immediately, or I can schedule it, right? Schedule 4, let me make sure I've got this right, 15th, I'm going for the 16th at 8 p.m. That's noon, that's when people are hanging out on Saturday. I'm throwing you games, you might be Uber eating. Actually, I'm gonna do it 7 because maybe you're doing lunch and you might do Uber Eats and maybe that's in your head as well. See, these are the things I think about, right? Okay, schedule, issue, are you sure? Okay, and I scheduled it. Okay, the reason I do that last step is because I wake up and I read my test email one more time. I skim through it. Is it right? Do I like it? Does it suck? You know what I mean? Like I give myself one more chance and then it's out the door, right? Once I look at it through the test, I'm good to go. And I'm out the door. This is the big, that's really the big thing. The E step of create is to enjoy, celebrate. We just made a newsletter. It's going out to all of our fans, to all of our audience. It's value filled. It's got personality. It was easy to do. It was built along the week, right? It wasn't scary. I still feel like I was creative in it. And you should read last week's. Last week's was super creative. I had a lot of fun with that one. It still feels valuable. It's worth sending. It's worth sharing my information that I gathered. I think it's cool. Next week, I'll switch to a different theme. We probably won't be so game heavy. We'll do something else, and I'll just keep learning and iterating. I hope this inspired you to make your newsletter. And if you do, I want to know about it. I'm going to explain that here in just a moment. But celebrate. You did something cool. You made something. It's art, right? It's not just an email. It's art. You put your passion into it. You put your interests. You put your personality into it. It's fun. It's cool. People enjoy that, and that energy gets into the words of your newsletter. And you'll notice when people reply back and be like, "I just love this one. This one's cool. Like, I watch newsletters, but yours is different. I like it. Thank you." Then I analyze it. I look at my analytics, right? I see what's working, what's not working. I don't just say nobody clicked on that article. I think about where that article was placed. Was it really far down? Maybe it had too many resources. Maybe the ones up top weren't getting very good clicks and it bored people, so they never made it to the end. I think about all these things, and then I reformulate my plan the next week, and I take what I learned or what I think, and I draw fresh ideas, and I try it out again, and we iterate every time. I've learned a ton in 12 issues or 11 issues, and that's where we're at now. And then the last thing I do is I create a new draft. So you can do it in Curated, but the most important step is you go over to Bublup, you go to My Research, you right-click. You can do this in the app as well on your phone, and I just do issue 13. I do it immediately, apps weekly, and I'm always proud to do this because what it is I closed one chapter, I'm immediately opening up another chapter. I've already started the next newsletter before even finding the resources that are going in it. I know that I'm making it because this is me saying I'm making next week. I hit create, and we're ready to go for next week. That is my newsletter process. That is the create process. Feel free to ask me anything you have here. Oh my gosh, there's all sorts of questions. I needed to scroll. Holy cow. Okay. I didn't scroll. Okay. How do I? Okay. Thank you very much for all your questions. It's time to run through these. Wow. Okay. Can you create newsletters? Can you create newsletters using these platforms on mobile devices? Yes, you can. Curated works great in Google Chrome. You can still do everything you want to in that, no problem. Bublup has an iOS and an Android app. They work fantastic. I use them every time. It's through the process. I usually sit down at the laptop to use Curated just because it's kind of like, I don't know, it feels like I'm making a newsletter, but I can also do it on my phone, and I use this every day to get the research into Bublup, so yes. Is there a recommended or ideal size and format for screenshots? Okay, so I kind of err on the side of start big and then let it shrink it down. Also think about rectangles and squares, okay? It's not so important that the screenshot looks the way it does in Bublup because that's your research, that's your catch-all, and you can stick that screenshot you make into Bublup so you have it ready. The important part for that is when it goes to Curated. Now they give you a 20 by 9, so they give you a nice rectangle, or they give you a square. So app icons are great for that. And then beyond that, original aspect ratio. If you're going original aspect ratio, maybe be a little cognizant about how big you're making that screenshot. If it is huge, right? I don't know, maybe it makes your email open up a little slower, right? You know, but for the most part, nah, I haven't had an issue with it. I stick heavy GIFs in there and they do take a moment to load, but they load up well. Let's see. Do you know of a way to easily curate into MailChimp? So I've used MailChimp. I haven't used it in a curation process. What I will say though is I think there are some methods to get it into MailChimp. I don't know them, but regardless, what you would be able to do regardless is you would use Bublup and then you would share to your next spot. So whether you use MailChimp or another asset, if you go into the where section in the Bublup folder, you'll see other places that you can create newsletters, and so you can check those out. I find that Bublup works well. I'm going to answer the rest of these questions, but I am realizing it's 9 o'clock, so I do, before anyone jumps off, I just want to show you, if you are inspired or if you do create a newsletter, I want to see it. I want to give feedback. I want to see what you do. In the Bublup folder, if you go to submit your newsletter, if you just take your newsletter, maybe create the email, turn it into PDF, or you have it like in Curated and you see it right on the web page, drop it in here. I promise I will look at all of them. I hope other people that are in the folder look at them too, and we can critique them. You know, this is a place to celebrate that you made it and a place to critique, and maybe the next issue has a little extra something to it, you know, something like that. The other thing I want to show you in Bublup here is how I broke these down. Let me move this. So I've got tools. You'll see in here different tools I use. Grammarly helps me with my spelling and grammar errors. I've got Curated in there. Giphy, right? You want to drop GIFs in there? You can use GIFs. Put them in there. Also, I believe Facebook just bought. Giphy. There's other tools in there, and I'll be adding to them tools that help me build my my newsletter. This is a really cool thing to turn screen recordings into GIFs, so you can check that out. Then other things I have are the Who. These are examples of newsletters out there, right? This one is all about emojis and apparently is super, super popular, which is pretty cool. There's other ones that are out there that I found inspiring and I take inspiration from. What kinds of newsletters can you make? And I have a chart there breaking down 4 of the main types and why I think the curated style one works best for me and my process and being fast. When, this is articles based on how your frequency. Do you want to go daily, weekly, monthly, semi-monthly? What do you want to do? Bi-weekly? And strategies and why and for use cases. The where is where you can make newsletters. And then the why is just like, why are newsletters cool? Why is it worth making? Why is it worth spending your time on doing it? I'm going to put more articles in there. That's probably the smallest filled folder so far. I also did an interview, a quick 10-minute coffee chat interview. We did it with Bublup too, and we had a conversation about how I make my newsletter. So if you find the way that I speak about this inspiring, there's another 10 minutes in this YouTube video. You're more than welcome to go and view. And then Curated Editions. Let's see what we got here. Calvin hooked us up. Okay, cool. So these are some inspiring newsletters as well. These are all curated newsletters, so you can see other ones, not just mine that are out there. Thank you, Calvin, for taking the challenge and sharing some information. So you have those that were just put in there today, which is kind of cool. Imagine your team just dropping content into your research folder. So that's the big stuff. I want to be respectful for time and just say that this is the end of the formal making a newsletter from start to send. I'm going to answer your questions here, and I just welcome you to look at these resources, comment. You can comment right on all the resources in Bublup. I will answer everything. Let's just make it fun and friendly, and let's make some newsletters and have fun with it. If you need some idea help, or if you have a technical question, obviously we have a Bublup here to answer your questions on the Bublup side, and we can always pass. I can always find more answers. I now know this Calvin dude, right? So Calvin at Curated. So if we got questions on that side, we can dig into MailChimp if we want to, whatever you want to do. I'm down to help you out. This is just a passion for me. I'm going to go to the questions here. What channels are you using to grow your newsletter? Facebook groups. I go to newsletter groups as well. I actually show off and talk about my newsletter and share my newsletter in newsletter groups. And then some of them are into apps, obviously, right? And so they get a little taste of it. I am in developer meetups. I'm in UI UX Facebook groups for developers. We're talking about it. I post a newsletter there about an app that I like because of the user interface. I share my newsletter that has the link to the app, and I explain that I share this in my newsletter because the UI or the UX or something about it that I like is interesting, or they're future forward, or they're innovating. And now someone gets to go see, well, let's see what he's talking about. They see what I'm talking about through my newsletter, right? And this is working. This is totally working. I tweet out my articles. Every person that I put in a newsletter, I find the author of the article, or I go into their comment thread of the article and say it there. Or I find the author on LinkedIn or email, and I email them. Every app, I make an App Store review, and I go in there and I say, I also promoted you, blah, 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 blah. Feel free to check out appsweekly.com, right? Product placement. I will email the developer and say, thank you so much. I loved it. I loved it enough to share it. You're more than welcome to tell everybody that you're in appsweekly.com and celebrate it. It's free promotion. And I'm never asking. I'm putting value up front and saying, look, I really like what you did. Kudos. It's worth talking about and worth sharing. I share it formally here. Feel free to do what you want with it. And it's working. They're sharing it out. They're just seeing that you're putting the effort up front, and they're reciprocating. But it's not a sell. There's no please push my newsletter. I don't do that. There's no reason to do that. Treat it like a win. Treat it like a celebration, and it seems to work. What is the best way to build your subscriber list? Okay, so exactly what I just said. Go in there and take positive comments, take positive, get into groups, whatever your niche is, get all up in your group, whatever you're talking about, wherever people that would want to read your newsletter, find those groups, get all up in those groups and comment. Make new posts. Don't ever hard sell. Share your newsletter when it has something related to the group. Talk about the thing in your newsletter. Share the newsletter as a link to get access, right, to the resource. So this is positive ways of making traffic go through you to get to the thing that is contextual to your topic. How many stories are considered too much? Okay, I put one that had 10, and I didn't get any haters. Nobody said anything, but I felt like that's a lot of thumb. That's too much thumb scroll. I put 4 or 5. When you put artwork in there, it's about 4 or 5 flicks, and you get to the end. To me, I feel that that is an ethical amount of time to expect someone to enjoy your content personally when it comes to a newsletter. Other opinions, I'm sure there's other opinions. Is Bublup free to use? Bublup is free to use. Yes, you drop it in, you get a you get a certain amount of gigs, and as you share to get other people into the Bublup, you get an extra gig up to, I think, 12 gigs or something like that. It's like a ton of space. It's like more than Google Drive. So yeah, it's free. And then if you want more space or more options, there is premium tier, and then I think it goes on from there. But if you go to bublup.com, just go to pricing, it's right there. But yeah, to hop in and get started, free. I mean, you're in it right now, so it's free. Can this be easily integrated with blog CMS systems? I don't know. Honestly, that might be, so they have their own CMS system in Curated, and that's as far as I've went. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. If you want to reach out, I think that was Calvin at curated.co. Maybe that's our resource now to ask a question like that, because I'm not particularly sure. But ask him. Ask him in here too. You could go right to Curated Editions. Ask anything Curated related in the Curated Editions folder, and I'll just say, hey Calvin, keep on the lookout, because that's where you'll get questions, and that was the whole point of inviting him in, right? Okay, can you add tweets or any other social media posts to a newsletter? You sure can. Apps or tweets, posts, they all have links. You go to the share. Google how to share a tweet in an email, or how to share a tweet, or URL link to tweet. Yep, and it's all there. You can share a tweet. You can go to Twitter, hit share on your phone, share it to Bublup, and the tweet right over to Bublup. Like, this is why the Bublup thing rocks for this thing. No matter where you're getting it from. I take screen recordings of Instagram ads for apps, because they know I'm into it. They give me these all the time. And when I see a cool one, I'll screen record, because I might want to use that for a GIF if I want to promote, if I want to talk about it. And I will take that screen recording, hit share, send it to the folder. Like, it's all in one spot. I love it. So yes. Thank you for the webinar. You're so welcome. Thank you. How did you get your newsletter to 150 subscribers? Okay, so I started with 12, and then I started hitting up Facebook friends. You know, you hard sell. You start in your small circles. Who's going to say yes? Who are your close friends and family? Start there. Then start branching out. Your communities, your groups, the ones that you're already in. You know, you're in your networks already. You know, start with just people that are fans of you. Then your professional groups, you're in these niches. You should be in Facebook and groups. You should be hashtag, or you should be following Twitter accounts. You should be all up in that. Start talking to them, right? Expose your passion, expose your love. Don't hard sell. Don't ask without giving. Just come in happy and friendly, and that works. And so we're 4 months in, and we're at 162, I believe that was. So that's how you do it. You just network, and it's just talking. It's not selling. It's talking. Thank you so much for putting on this webinar. This was very informative, easy to follow, and fun learning experience. Oh, you're so welcome. Can't wait for your next one. Thank you. Oh, my Aunt Robin, I love it. Thanks for sharing this information, Wade. Going to check Bublup out. Very cool. And that's my questions. We're at 10 after, so I do apologize for slight lateness. We're probably time to close out. I just want to say that I come high energy, and I say a lot. This will be recorded and put into the folder for you. I have such a passion for showing people how to do things and geeking out about my topics. I fell in love with making a newsletter, and I fell in love with figuring out a fast way to do it. It's a joy to make a newsletter every week, and I love that my process is fast. It allows me to spend the time on the things that I really want to spend my time on, which is geeking out about my content, right? And then digging into the article. Storing it and organizing it are the fastest processes I just showed you. I build it along the way. And the parts and the Bublup tool and the Curated tool are just like a dynamic duo that work out well. And for me, that's what it is. This is not a pitch for that. We're just sharing out the love, but I'm telling you, my system works. I just showed you with talking quite substantially that I built this and sent it out within 48 minutes of the talk starting. I thank you so much for coming to the webinar. It is Friday. I hope you enjoy your continued quarantine. We're on lockdown here for 4 days straight. That's just part of Turkey, part of what they're doing here in Istanbul. So I'll be around. I will be all up in this Bublup folder, okay? If you have any comments, questions, share a resource, share your newsletter, get it in there. Anything at all, holler at me there. If you want to check out my newsletter, the best way to contact me is honestly the way I say is, if you want to contact me and ask me a question, let's just exchange some value. Subscribe to Apps Weekly. Next one that comes out, hit reply. I will answer everything. I answer every email. It's like literally the joy is I'm geeking out, and the feedback and the replies is part of the fun. And if you make your newsletter, you're going to find out that it's part of the fun for you too. So with that, I'm going to close shop here and say thank you so much for joining, for spending your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're at with me. And I hope to do another webinar with you soon. Maybe we'll talk about building an app or how the newsletter is going now, if I've tweaked my plan, maybe art. We'll just see where it goes. So thank you so much for paying attention, and I hope that you got a ton of value, and I will see you later.